aside from the environment, are there any issues that are really close to your heart?
Well, first of all, I don't think the environment is an issue. I think the environment is the location where the issues are taking place. So I always find it sort of interesting that the Green Party is framed as a one-issue party. I think the other parties are one-issue-at-a-time parties. They don't look at policy holistically. So I mean, I think there's a flaw in the question itself. I think what the Green Party is a party that's got a new paradigm, right? We're a party that understands an ecological worldview, and that worldview becomes part of all of our policy, right? So as an example, an issue that's really, really important to me is education. A lot of my background is in the politics of education, and one of the things that really motivated me to get involved in politics was seeing education being undervalued in terms of the role that it can play in our society. Not only are public schools one of the remaining public spaces that exist, these places where you can come and be part of a community, and it's just big open space with a lot of opportunity to do creative things and to use that space in ways for collective action. But it's also where we build our sort of collective understanding of the planet, right? Like if it wasn't for educational institutions, we wouldn't know anything about ourselves and about our world other than what we sort of can just feel instinctively. When you're talking about underfunding education, you're not just talking about taking away people's opportunities to get better jobs, or to increase the sort of investment that we put into our intellectual capital in terms of what sort of a cadre of students that are out there that will become our workforce. But we're actually talking about limiting our ability to increase our collective understanding. I think one way that you need to look at it is, for every student that doesn't get into a university or college because of financial barriers, that student could have a cancer cure. That student could have the insight into a renewable energy technology that could revolutionize the world in some way. But if we don't tap into that potential that we have, not just young people but all people, I think we're really doing ourselves a disservice as a society. I mean, just the bare bones of the facts of it is that for every dollar you put into an educational institution and into the education system, you get something like $10 back in terms of the money that comes back into the economy, because you are building that intellectual capital. But beyond that, I mean, what kind of a world do we want? Do we want a world that's filled with people that are educated, with a world where we really cherish art and culture and civilization, or do we want to live in a world that's based around ignorance and nothing really but commerce? Not that there isn't a room for commerce in the world. Of course there is, but what kind of a commerce are you going to have if you don't invest in developing that commerce into what it could be? And the only way we're ever going to do that is through our education system. It's fundamentally important to the future of our planet. And British Columbia has really done itself a disservice by first underfunding education during the time that the NDP was in power. They did freeze tuition fees, but they underfunded education. And then under the Liberals, they continued to underfund education, but then deregulated tuition fees. So, I mean, tuition fees tripled or quadrupled, or went up as much as 10 times in some places for some programs. So, I mean, when we look at our healthcare system, why is it we don't have access to doctors? Well, how are you going to have doctors if you don't have medical students? When we look at sustainability, I mean, why is it that we aren't taking these steps that are necessary to bring about sustainability in our society? Well, how are we going to do that if we don't invest in research and development, if we don't actually have centers for learning and innovation? I mean, how are we going to create this manufacturing sector? It's not going to happen all by itself. It takes investment and it takes intention. I mean, if we're serious about sustainability, if we're serious about multiculturalism and peace in the world, I mean, these are things that take education to make them happen. And to say one more thing, ecology is just as important to the future of our planet as writing and arithmetic, and they're just as important for every individual in terms of their ability to function in the world as reading and writing, right? Like, It's the world that we live in today is a world where we understand our connection with our natural world, right? I mean, during the Industrial Revolution, as we were building this world, you know, the general consciousness out there was not ecologically wise, right? Like, we didn't understand until we started feeling the impacts. I mean, okay, so we burn coal, it goes into the air, oh my God, the air just turned red, I can't breathe, we're all dying. You know, we learned from that. At least I thought we did, but yet, I mean, I just came from a protest the other day about coal bed methane, right? Where they're talking about drilling in you know, a very rare, untouched ecosystem. That's one of the last places where woodland caribou exists, where there's still large amounts of salmon spawning, you know? Like, do we not learn from our mistakes? And how are we going to learn from our mistakes unless we invest in education, unless we cherish history, unless we, you know, study ourselves and look at what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and then try to get to the next level. So, I mean, it speaks to a lack of a desire to really change things, and to change things for the better if you don't invest in education. So, you know, I think education should be free in British Columbia, and it's not something that we can't afford to do. If I hear one more time that we can't afford public education or we can't afford public health care, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be a happy person, I'll tell you that, because we're the richest people in the world. I mean, we live here in this resource-rich province that's just filled with abundance, that's just overflowing with wealth. You know, not just in terms of natural resources, we've tripled the number of millionaires in this province in the last 5 to 10 years, right? Like, if not more than that. There is so much capital, both natural and financial, sitting right here, and yet it's really just a matter of political will. You know, there is enough money to provide housing for every single British Columbian. There is enough money to provide health care that not only is, you know, available and accessible with low wait times, but healthcare that's close to your community, that's really right in your backyard, and you know, and we can also invest in preventative healthcare. An educational institution is a place that is important for everyone, and you know what? It's important for your entire life. What's this idea that you graduate and all of a sudden you know everything, right? Like, I mean, one degree in one area does not mean that you understand anything about everything else that's out there. So, I mean, we need more interdisciplinary study. We need more applied approaches within our We need more applied approaches within our institutions. Like, why is it that the community college down the road from here isn't trying to discover how to provide food for this community? You know, we pave over agricultural land reserve land, and then we don't even study the implications of it. You know, it's enough to make me bad. But education should be free for every British Columbian. Healthcare should be accessible for every British Columbian. These things are connected. We can afford it. You know, these are things that aren't optional. These are bottom lines of civilization, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, free education is a right. You know, education is access to our collective wisdom.